so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on the show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's interview episode, I'm very happy to have Leon Logothetis here with me on the show. Leon is an avid adventurer who has visited more than 90 countries, has traveled to every continent on his National Geographic TV series, Adventures of a Nobody, and most recently has started shining a spotlight on the kind-hearted nature of people as they help him travel around the world on his newest show, The Kindness Diaries. Hey there, Leon. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to stop by. Obviously, you're a busy man, so I want to jump right in. And I always start with the same question. And with the same question, you're in an elevator. The guy next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is most certainly traveling. And my passion is connecting with as many people as I can.
Beautiful, beautiful passion indeed. And well, why don't you do this, if you would, Leon? Take a moment and just give us a little bit of your background. How did you end up in this unique life path that we're going to dig into a little bit? How did you get here?
Well, I used to be a broker in the City of London. And on the inside, and on the outside, I had pretty much everything you would want. On the inside, I pretty much had nothing you would want. Very depressed, no sense of purpose. And I found myself living someone else's life. It was a good life, but it was someone else's. And I happened across the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which is a romanticized version of Che Guevara traveling around South America, relying on the kindness of strangers. And there was something about that movie that really touched my heart. It made me realize there was another way to live. I didn't have to sit behind this desk. I could go out and I could meet the world. And I decided after watching that movie, it was more the tipping point. That was what pushed me over the edge to quit my job and to start traveling the world. That's how it all began in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've seen that movie. It is very inspiring and certainly filled with all the things, adventure, all kinds of challenges. And I'm sure you have faced a lot of those same things that are portrayed in the movie. Certainly you've went further than Che Guevara did in that movie with hitting 90 countries in every continent. That is an incredible feat, my friend.
Yes, it was a very interesting adventure. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that adventure and sort of what you came across? Now, your first show, you had Adventures of Nobody. You had a little bit of money to work with, correct?
Yeah. In the first show, I hitchhiked across America and Europe and England on €5 a day. And that was, but relying entirely on strangers, often that small amount of money.
Right. So it was sort of like your segue into the Kindness Diaries, which is a little more extreme, right? You relied 100% on the kindness of others.
Yes. So the Kindness Diaries, I purchased a vintage yellow motorbike with a sidecar. I called it I called it Kindness One, sort of like Air Force One, but
a little less jet power.
Far less jet power. Drove it around the world from LA to LA, relying on the kindness of strangers.
Excellent. Well, so you've been, and you of course have documented that in the show Kindness Diaries, which is on Netflix. I actually caught one of the episodes and tend to go back. How many episodes? How long has that project been going on?
There's 13 episodes.
13. Okay. So I still have some others to see for sure. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you kind of came across. I mean, some of the highlights of your travels. I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear if you care to share.
Yeah, sure. So, the journey was relying on the kinds of strangers, but there was a twist. And the twist was that unsuspecting Good Samaritans would receive a life-changing gift. I couldn't help everyone, but in each episode I helped at least one person. And I would go up to people and I would tell them what I was doing. I'm traveling around the world relying on kindness. And many people would say no, I can't help, which is fine. And some people would say yes, I can help. One of the greatest stories I have is I was in Pittsburgh and I ended up walking through a park in Pittsburgh. I started chatting with this guy. And I asked him if I could stay in his house. And he turns around to me and says, I'm really sorry, but I'm homeless. And I didn't realize he was homeless. Yeah, I didn't realize he was homeless. Otherwise, of course, I wouldn't have asked him that. But then he turns around and he does something pretty profound. He says, well, you know what, Leon? If you can come and stay with me tonight. I'll feed you, I'll protect you, I'll give you some clothes. And it was a truly profound moment. And I ended up staying with him on the streets of Pittsburgh. He did everything he said he would do, and it was a beautiful moment. And he taught me that true wealth is not in our wallets, but it's in our hearts. And if a totally homeless chap with absolutely nothing, the guy had one bag, could find, then why can't all of us?
Right. It's sort of like the story you hear of the rich man who gives $100 and the poor man who gives $1, and how if that's all he has, it's a bigger gift in a sense, right? So staying on the streets of Pittsburgh, huh? Was that anything? Was there anything of note that occurred? Did you feel I mean, how did that make you feel? It had to, sort of put you in that, obviously, in that that sort of position that you'd never been in before, sort of as a homeless person for the night, if you will. Did you feel very vulnerable? Did you feel unsafe, or was it, overall just a very positive experience?
I followed my intuition. I felt that this chap would protect me. I felt safe with him. Otherwise, I would never have stayed there. Right. Because there were other moments throughout my journey where I had the chance to stay with homeless people, and I had the chance to stay with other people, and I said no because I didn't feel right. So he was someone who kept his word and was truly a genuine individual who really cared about my well-being and really cared about spending some time together and feeling like, there was a sense of, because he had some friends as well. I mean, in the evening and the night when we were sleeping on the streets in a little doorway, it was just me and him. But prior to that, they'd created like a little bit of a camp, and there were 3 or 4 of them, and
Right.
there was a sense of camaraderie, which was quite powerful.
Right. Wow. What an experience. You mentioned something that really makes me think, and that is you talked about following your intuition. I've got to imagine, that someone who has done what you've done, you've fine-tuned. I mean, would you say that your intuition has been really honed and fine-tuned? I mean, my belief, and we talk about it sometimes on the show, we've even had like intuitives or people with, psychic gifts, which, I personally believe all of us have to some level or another. You can even see it in the animal kingdom. But do you feel like that intuition was refined and honed and, and what do you think, how important would you say that trait is in just sort of a normal everyday life for those who aren't traveling all around the world?
I would say that my intuition has definitely been honed. You can't go and experience all these travels and meet all these people and be put in all these situations and not have an intuition that is a little bit more honed, for sure. I've had so many experiences and hard lessons. I remember I was in Panama many years ago. I was about to cross the Panama Canal in a ship, and I was in a hotel, and the hotel people said to me, "Don't go out at night." And I was like, whatever. I'm not going to listen.
They said what? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
They said, "Don't go out at night."
Oh, okay.
And I didn't listen to them, and I ended up being beaten up.
Oh, wow.
So my point for that story is that made me like, okay, you should listen to people and you should listen to what's inside. Because I was also, as I was walking, I was like, I feel very safe, but I kept on going. So
right.
It's definitely an important aspect of being human, is to use your intuition, to listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your take? And we get into a lot of this sort of stuff on the show, obviously. But I'm curious on what your take, someone who's really put themselves out there on such a limb, if you will. What is your take on intuition and where that's coming from, what it is, sort of what is the source of this, sort of pre-knowing, if you will?
Pre-knowing. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just part of who we are as humans. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that we all have it. It's whether we listen to it. Maybe it's just inbuilt in us. Maybe it's, for many thousands of years, it was how we lived. Some of the explorers, some of the things that humans have done over the generations is pretty amazing. Some of the, building the pyramids, all these kind of things. With the advent of phones and internet and computers, maybe that's dulling our intuition.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I just saw or read an article where it was talking about phones and how social media, literally what they're doing is designing it in a way where it creates, it's the same as like drugs, the infinite scroll. It's like designed to keep you hooked in. It's designed to, and it's giving you anxiety when you're not on it. So curious about that piece of it. On your journeys, did you document, stay sort of online, or did you, ever completely cut off from that world?
Throughout my journeys, I've done a mix. Like, there have been times when I've been in the middle of nowhere with no phone, no money, no nothing. For extended periods of time.
Wow.
I did a journey where I did a vision fast, where I went into the wilderness of Utah. And I had nothing. I had no phone, no nothing, and it was just me.
Wow.
It's not an easy thing to do, but when you come out, you're much wiser. Then there are moments where I'm fully connected, like now.
Right.
For example. So, and then there are moments when I'm kind of partially connected. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you mentioned the story in Panama. I'm curious, what is the most precarious position you found yourself in?
Most precarious position. Well, I'm sure there were some position. Well, I was in a precarious position and I wasn't aware of it. But,
Right.
The most precarious position, there was a situation where I was driving through India, and a couple of days after I left that precise spot, a bomb went off. But again, that I wasn't there in that moment.
Right.
There was an instance in Indianapolis when I was in downtown Indianapolis, very late at night, and I was stopped by this chap. Let's call him an entrepreneur of the evening. And he wouldn't let me leave. It sounds bizarre, but every time I tried to leave, he wouldn't. And for half an hour, he kind of just sat there rambling. And every time I tried to move, he would block me. I had to end up getting someone's attention to call the police. I've had moments. There was a moment in Romania where the Romanians are not particularly good drivers. And if I receive any hate mail from Romanians for that comment, you're lovely human beings, but you're not very good drivers, I'm afraid. We're driving like this little small town, and someone went down the wrong way on a one-way street and crashed into us, and we could have ended really badly. So yeah, there were moments. There were bad moments, but you learn from them as long as they don't take you out completely. Right.
How about the flip side of that coin? Is there any particular moment that stands out as your most rewarding, most rewarding time? And I know that's probably a tough question because I'm sure there's a bunch, but is there anything in particular that stands out to you?
I mean, there were so many moments from the Kindness Diaries show, from beyond. I mean, one of the moments from the Kindness Diaries show was I ended up in an Indian slum in Delhi. And on the outside, these guys have nothing. I mean, practically nothing. Yet on the inside, they're so rich in so many ways. I ended up sleeping in the slum in an Indian house when I met these guys, and it was just such a beautiful experience. Played cricket, just did so many connectivity things where you're connecting on a human to human level.
Right. So I one of the things that, of course, is a big part of your journeys is gifting and giving and sort of opening up that channel with people in a way that really few people have, right? We have all done gifts to family on maybe birthday or holidays, Christmas, right? But when you start interacting with people on, such a broad level and exploring this whole idea of gifting, giving and receiving, it made me think when I was watching, the Kindness Diaries. A friend of mine, Halcyon, talks about gifting a lot. He's a big part of the Burning Man community. If you're familiar with Burning Man, it's in the desert in Nevada 1 week a year, and there's nothing there except you can't buy anything. It's all a gifting culture, and everyone's sort of sharing, and it creates this very interesting dynamic. And one of the things that hearing him discuss it, he talked about when you buy something, for example, an exchange where there's money, it's a sum zero. I give you something, you give me something. It's a sum zero. But when you actually gift something, and you're gifting it from the heart with very pure intent, not with some sort of ulterior motive, it's a sum too, because actually, as I gift something to someone, I'm releasing all these endorphins and everything in my brain. It's this incredible, incredibly positive, enriching, uplifting experience, not only for me, for the person that is the recipient of the gift. And really, I would say I'd take it a step further and say it's a sum three, because if anyone has witnessed that act of kindness, if you will, it releases endorphins for them, and they have the same sort of experience, even though they're not directly involved in the exchange. So, I'm curious on your thoughts on that, and would you find that having done it on such a grand scale, if you would agree with that perspective?
Look, I would definitely agree that when you give something to someone, you feel better.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful thing to be able to give to someone, to be able to make someone's life a little bit better. It doesn't have to be a massive gift. It can be something small. That's the beauty of it. How you show
a smile.
Yeah. How you show up in the world matters. How you show up on a daily basis matters. Making a commitment to becoming a better human being and sharing those gifts with other people matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And this sort of gets into my philosophy on the ultimate nature of reality, if you will. And it's something we talk a lot about on the show. My theory and belief is that it's all extensions of self. There's really only one of us in the room, ultimately, or on the road. It's the consciousness that animates your form is the same consciousness that animates my form. And this is why giving feels so good. And I even go as far to say is you'll always find your true purpose in life what will be the most fulfilling purpose, right? There's many things a person could do. They could be a broker or whatever, right? But the most fulfilling purpose is always going to involve giving in some way, because in actuality, there are no others. You're always giving to self. And this creates this sort of feedback loop of self-love in a sense. Curious what you think about that concept.
I think that when you do give to someone else, you certainly do give to yourself as well. So I've never heard that, to be honest, but it feels right, because when I'm giving to someone else, or when I'm present with someone else and someone else is feeling good, then I feel good.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Leon, on the show, we go pretty deep down the rabbit hole of, some sort of metaphysical and mystical experiences and things like that on a lot of the shows, and on the daily shows where I don't have an interview and I just explore a lot of those, what I call, exploring the ultimate nature of reality and my theories on them. So it's always interesting for me to even communicate with someone who maybe doesn't necessarily, take those same perspectives, or have had those, like you said, I haven't really ever considered that sort of idea. But it's always interesting for me to see sort of, I guess, some level of what I would consider evidence to these theories in just everyday life and exchanges. And it's one that I always will say to people, be open-minded to the idea. I always say, there are no others. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. It's all an extension of you. And, the big sort of cosmic gag, if you will, is we think there are others, but when in actuality, it's always a reflection vibrationally in some way of self. So everything you bump up against is a mirror, right? And so it's just, it's something we talk a lot about on the show. And something that I always encourage anyone who maybe hasn't explored something as maybe as radical as that is, something to consider and play with as you sort of go through your exchanges. Play with just with an open mind, with the idea that okay, this is literally another me in disguise. And I find that you can have some really, really powerful experiences when you sort of approach reality from that perspective. So.
I definitely relate to that. There's certainly when you connect with someone else, there's always something in them that
right.
relates to you. And look, we're all human beings, and we all came from ultimately the same place. So we all may be a bit different and maybe a bit unique, but ultimately at base we're the same. So what I see in you, I see in me. And when you see something, like I had a wise man once said to me, because I'm a big fan of certain historical figures, for example, Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. And I would always say to him, I'd say, wow, these people are amazing. They're amazing. I wish I was like them. And he'd always turn around to me and say, the only reason you feel like they are amazing is because what's in them is actually in you.
Right.
Yeah, that was a profound lesson he taught me.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's such a beautiful beautiful concept. And, one of the things that I really like, and I can't remember where I saw it, but obviously you've exemplified this in your life and the path that you've chosen, this sort of can-do mentality. If you think you can, then you can. If you think you can't, whether, Henry Ford said it best, I think, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And so I'd be curious, what your sort of perspective is, or your advice to people who are out there and they're at that broker job. They're, scared to take the step off the ledge, if you will, to do something and put themselves out there. And obviously you've done that. You've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right? So, what is your advice for someone who is maybe where you were at that, all those years ago?
Look, I would say that it's not an easy place to be. It's very easy for me to sit here and say, well, just go and do it. Yeah?
Right.
But it's much harder to actually do. And the gift that I received that enabled me to actually go out and change things was pain. Because I felt I was in so much pain, emotional pain, that it forced me to take action. Had I not been in that level of pain, I would never have left. I would have stayed still. So sometimes, we're like, we don't want pain, but sometimes it's a good thing, because if it can inspire you to make that leap, that change, then it's actually you can utilize it to create good. You can utilize it to change your circumstances instead of wallowing in it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel it. Feel it.
Right.
So open yourself up to it. Let it flow through you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point is, oftentimes we'll look at pain or hardship as this bad thing when really it's oftentimes exactly what we need to lead us to the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves, right? The lump of coal is essentially a diamond in disguise at some point, at some time, at some level, is what I kind of encourage people to consider. And, and it's that pain that fuels us oftentimes. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. You've done some other interesting sort of experiments with travel as well. You did free cab rides in a vintage taxi. Can you tell us about that one?
Yes. So I grew up in London, and obviously I've taken many black cabs, which is what they're called in London. And I'd always had this desire to be a cabbie, which I don't know where that came from. So I love adventure, and I love connecting with people. So I came up with this really interesting adventure where I was going to buy a vintage London taxi. I was going to call it the Kindness Cab, and I was going to drive across America giving free cab rides to people. And everyone who came into the cab, the meter was running, but they didn't have to pay for it. And at the end, I gave money to charity. But the journey was amazing because, A, the cab kept breaking down, which is just usual. When you buy a 30-year-old cab, these things happen. And B, the people that I met, from picking up mothers who are picking their kids up, from picking up older people in retirement homes and taking them to buy them ice creams. You could call me on the Kindness Cab hotline. You could
that's awesome.
Request a pickup from Twitter or Facebook, and it was just an interesting adventure, I must say.
Wow, that's like puts an idea that I had on steroids many years ago. Speaking of Burning Man, I was at that event, and I had a little electric bike that I'd turned into a pterodactyl. And so it looked like a pterodactyl kind of flying around the playa, the desert there. And so I would spend my days a lot of times with calling it pterodactyl taxi. And I'd go around and, taxi people who are walking. Because sometimes if you didn't have some kind of transport out there, it's really big. You could walk, from side to side. It'd take you over an hour probably. So I would go around with pterodactyl taxi. I think that is a very small relevant experience that I had. So I can only imagine. So did you actually just go from city to city and then just post online, hey, I'm in this town, who needs a ride, kind of thing?
Basically, yes. Some were random, but basically, yes, that's what happened.
Very, very cool. What a fun idea. And how long did it take you to sort of complete the taxi journey?
It took about 3 weeks.
Wow. So what are some of the common, obviously you've mixed it up with hundreds of people, if not more at this point on your journeys. What are some of the common themes that you notice in people? Was there any kind of common thread as you get into different cultures and different areas and different, you're in the deep South, you're in, New York City, you're overseas in India, is there anything that stuck out to you as sort of common themes?
Yes. To me, the greatest theme was the universality of the human experience, in the sense that everyone simply just wants to be seen. And what do I mean by being seen? By being seen, I mean everyone just wants to be heard. Everyone just wants to be loved. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what country you live in. It doesn't matter what political viewpoint you have. At base, raw humanness. We just want to be seen.
Right.
As I was spending time in the slums in India, there was a mother who was saying goodbye in the morning. There was a mother who was saying goodbye to her 2 kids. It was an 8-10-year-old kid. And I was sitting there looking at that and thinking to myself, that's exactly the same love and understanding and desire that a mother in Ohio has when she says goodbye to her kids. And
right.
That was one of the greatest things that I learned, that we tend to put ourselves into like little tribes and the other tribe is wrong and blah, blah, blah. Well, ultimately at base, you're all human beings and we're all the same and we all just want to be seen.
Yeah, it's so profound, and it really, it's so profound, but also so simple. It's like kind of like, yes, of course. Yet I saw this. It makes me think of this experiment I saw a few years ago where they took a kid and dressed him up like he was homeless, begging or what have you, and real dirty and tattered clothes, and people didn't really give him the time of day. Or if they did, it was very minimal. Then they took the same kid, they cleaned him up, they made him, dressed him real nice and kind of put him in the same position. He's there looking around like he doesn't have any adult supervision, and people are all over him. Oh, where's your mom? How can I help you? What's happened here? So to me, that was like really powerful to see and realize how we sort of create these filters on how we view people based off of how they're dressed, right? It's insane when at the end of the day, it was the same little kid, just in different outfit and a little cleaned up.
Yeah, it's that actually I've heard that story before, and it's a pretty interesting story. It's kind of how it's a very interesting story. Yeah, it really is. It says a lot. And so anytime we're looking at someone who is homeless and making any sort of prejudgments about the idea, the concept that, oh, well, they're homeless and so they don't feel the same way we do, or it don't matter as much. It's like, no, what you were saying, it's like they're the exact same on the inside. And, if anything, deserve love and need love more. Obviously, they're hurting in some way, right? So, and
or going without or whatever the issue is. Who knows? It could be circumstances that led them there that was certainly not because they were lazy or, what have you. There's a lot of wild, extenuating circumstances that people come across, and yet we can walk by, as a general rule and sort of make these snap judgments, which are just, just off basis.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So I live in Santa Monica, and
okay.
I was just sitting down on one of the benches, and I saw this homeless chap crossing the road, and he looked a little bit troubled. I could sense that he just felt totally. I could sense that no one was paying him any attention. It was as if he did not exist.
Right.
So I decided in that moment to go up and start talking to him. And it turned out his name was Herbert. And we got chatting for like 10, 15 minutes. And I didn't end up giving him anything materialistic. But what I wanted him to know and what I wanted him to receive was that he mattered. And that I didn't want him to feel like everyone else was just ignoring him, which they were. And don't get me wrong, there were times I walk past homeless people all the day and I ignore them. But in this moment, I just wanted him to feel like there was another individual who was looking him in the eyes and making him feel like he was important.
Right. And I'm sure it just lit him up and probably changed his whole demeanor, everything about the energy you were getting previously.
It most certainly did. And that was what I wanted. That was my aim, just to make him feel like there was a level of importance within him.
Right. And that's the thing that's so beautiful about that sort of behavior. It doesn't cost you anything. And of course, you came away feeling like $1 million. You completely changed his day, would be my guess. And this is something that we all have the ability within us to do. And I would even go so far as to say, if we set the intention of, okay, I want to, universe, I want to uplift someone's day to day, which, by the way, will uplift my day to day. So deliver me those circumstances. And what I found is when you play with, the universe in that way, you'll get some interesting results and interesting opportunities. So I think that's a wonderful example that you shared there. And, one of the things that you also talk a little bit about is the idea of the inner rebel. Can you talk a little bit on that concept?
Sure. The inner rebel is just the part of you that says, I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to make the best of my life. I'm going to inspire people, and I'm not going to listen to other people's conditioning and society's conditioning. And I'm going to go and rebel against the world, not in like a causing havoc kind of way,
right?
But in a way where you're going to make the most of your time on this earth. And that rebel turns around and says, enough. I've had enough of being small. I've had enough of living in a way that's conducive to society, but not conducive to my goals. Right.
Yeah, I think everyone can relate, has at least heard that voice at some level, and some of us have, maybe repressed it more than others, but it seems to be certainly a common theme with people that listen to this show. It's like, that voice that continues to grow louder and louder on how can I live a life that is more fulfilling and sort of make some level of difference, and it doesn't mean you got to do something super grandiose, as we talked about a moment ago, even if it's something very small, that just seems to be a common theme that everyone can resonate with at some level, I believe.
Absolutely. And some people come and say to me, Leon, I don't know, I can't just quit my job, or I can't take a yellow motorbike and go around the world. I can't give people these big gifts. And I say, that's not the message of the show. That's not the message of the taxi. The message is how you show up in the world matters. And you can do that every day. You can do that when you walk down the street. You can do that when you go to Starbucks and you're kind to the barista. You can do that on a daily basis. That's the message of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, for those who, of course, are trying to make that transition, the quitting the job thing, and we've touched on this a few times, but now you've written a few books, right? And one, a roadmap to the life you are meant to live. How would you say someone uncovers this? Can you give us sort of a synopsis of the book?
Yeah. So basically, the book is all the lessons I've learned on the road. And kind of my aim is to disseminate those lessons and share them with the readers. I've been very fortunate. I've traveled extensively. I've met many inspiring people. I've met many teachers, and they've enabled me to live the life I live today. And I wouldn't be here in this capacity had I not met those people. So the book is really a way to go out into the world and to find your dreams. And for example, one of the first part of the book is to locate your big dream. Everyone has a big dream, but most of us are like, the big dream's not going to happen. What's the point?
Right.
What's the point of even talking about it? But if you write it down without judgment and you give it voice and you share it with someone safe and someone who's not going to put you down, it takes on a life of its own. So there's little things like that. One of the first things is to write down your big dream. And then I try and guide you, not in a preachy way, because I have no PhDs. I have no, qualifications per se, but I try and help to guide based on my experiences how to get to that point of living your dream. For example, the next step of after, writing your big dream is sometimes you got to take a risk. Sometimes, little small baby steps, but you've got to take that leap of faith. And I think it was Martin Luther King. I'm going to butcher this quote, but he said something like, when you jump, the net will appear, or something like that. And that's scary to do. But if you can do it, and if you can take people along with you who can help you, it's a life-changing moment.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote that I literally read at least once a week on the show by Terrence McKenna. That's very similar to that, and basically how I'll sum it up, because it's kind of a longer quote and I don't have it pulled up in front of me. But basically, it says, when you jump off the cliff, you ultimately will find it's a feather bed, and maybe that's a little kind of glamorizing, because there is, of course, going to be all kinds of bumps along the way. But in the end, compared to the life you were living before, I would say it's safe. I'm hopefully safely assuming it is a feather bed, comparatively, with the amount of reward, gratification, life purpose that you feel. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. And I don't want people to think, like I said, it's easy for me to sit here now. We'll just jump off a cliff. No,
right.
Jump off a cliff and the angels will pick you up.
Right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't ultimately work that way. But to get to that point where you jump off a cliff, you have to have some faith.
Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah, I would say that's a huge one for people finding that faith. And it's something that I talk about all the time. You've really got to find a way. You got to believe that you are worthy, that you're worthy of more, and that there is whatever, we can get into sort of the deep discussion. I do it all the time, and I don't think we'll do it on this episode, but we can get into deep discussion about sort of what is going on, the inner workings of the ultimate nature of reality, and what is this benevolent force that apparently sort of lifts people up who, fortune favors the bold. It's another one that kind of it makes the same point, that quote. But whatever this force is, finding that belief in yourself, however you define it, however you refer to it, whether it's God, whether it's your higher self, whether it's, whatever, the universe, there's something that appears to lift people up who are willing to sort of take that faith and be willing to kind of, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, do something every day that makes you uncomfortable. Put themselves out on the edge a little bit at a time. Maybe not the big dive off all at once, but kind of continue to take steps in that direction. Is my perception on the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that resonates. It definitely resonates.
So One of the questions, that I always love to go to is from my guests is getting any story of synchronicity or serendipity along their life's journey, something that appears to line up that is sort of like as I believe it's Carl Jung defined synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence. Do you have any good stories of synchronicity that you'd like to share?
Yes, I do. There was a moment on the Kindness Diaries when I just arrived in Las Vegas, and I walked down to, I think it was downtown. I was in downtown. I was walking around, just kind of connecting with people, and I started chatting with this chap. He had a really large beard, if my memory serves correct, and what I'm doing. And he says, wow, posted today about kindness. I just posted this really powerful about kindness. And here you are telling me that you're traveling around the world, relying entirely on the kindness of strangers. So I think that's a pretty powerful moment of synchronicity.
Yeah, that was in what's great about it too, that was in your very first episode, the one that I had the pleasure of watching. And that's immediately came to my mind, of course, because I love stories of synchronicity, obviously. And so as soon as I saw that, I'm like, whoa, that is awesome. Right at the very first leg of your journey, you go up to this guy and, of course, you're the Kindness Diary guy. And he just posted how kindness is the key, like to everything. I forget exactly what his quote was, but essentially that's what it used the word kindness and illustrating how important it was. So how cool to then here's the manifestation of that sort of incarnate, right? As you walk up to him, and then you ended up staying with him and connecting with his family and the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful evening, and I still stay in touch with him. Actually, his name was Maurice. When I go to Vegas,
wow. That's awesome. So, and to take it even further, now he's a part of your life ongoing. That's pretty amazing. What a cool story, and what a cool start to your journey. What a lot of people will suggest, and I believe is, these synchronicities are sort of winks from the universe that you're on a good path. You're doing what you should be doing. And that's certainly how I take them. Speaking of, and I can even elaborate a little bit on the synchronicity of you being on the show. So there is quite a few listeners to the Positive Head podcast have been inspired to go, from me and other places, of course, but to start their own podcast. And one of those individuals is a guy named Ethan Sherritt, who just lived also in LA, managed apartment building there, just quit the job, is going out, on the road with his 1.5-year-old baby, though, to just mix it up with people, stay with, his aim is to stay with Positive Head listeners around the country. And actually, he's creating his own podcast called Joyful, Full. So kind of your double meaning there, joyful, and connecting with people and just getting their, sort of ordinary people's lives and perspectives as he travels, in a somewhat similar fashion to you. So that just occurred to me as we were about to start recording today. I'm like, okay, interesting. This guy, Ethan, just, kind of posted on our Facebook group, Positive Heads, that he was going to do this journey, and actually, asking if he could stay with people, all over the place. And, of course, I said, oh, that's so awesome. I would love to have you, before you, as you start out your journey, come down and we should meet up. And so I actually yesterday afternoon met Ethan in person. Amazing guy. Actually, it'd be great for you. Maybe you could, it'd be kind of perfect for you to be on a show. So perhaps that should happen. Link you guys up if that's in the flow for you both. But so there's a little bit of synchronicity right there, and that I just met with this, what I would say extension of self that is doing something very similar to you. And here I am talking to you about, you're on the other end. He's on the very front end of his journey, just quit the job, just about to leave town, the nerves and everything intact.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Yeah, synchronicity is something that I get to see a lot of. When you put yourself out into the world, things happen, things that you would just be like, logically, how could that be?
Right. And, what I find is the more you sort of pay attention to that, the more, of course, where attention goes, energy flows. The more you pay attention to it, the more it appears. The more it appears, the more you pay attention to it. Kind of that very positive feedback loop that is gives you the warm feels, the warm fuzzy feels, when it happens. So I love it, obviously. And we'll just take it one step further. I synchronistically today am just before this just hit me right now. Right before we started recording, my new friend Noah Lambert has a podcast called Synchronicity, and I interviewed with him maybe 3 weeks ago, and he just posted, and I shared it right before we jumped on this recording, this call, me being on the Synchronicity podcast. So there you go. It comes all kinds of ways. There's many layers to the onion.
Yes.
So, Leon, what is next for you? Man, you've done so much cool stuff. What's next up?
Well, I'm working on a new season of the Kindness Diaries where I'll be going around the world in an electric car called Kindness 2.
I love it. A little more protection from the elements.
It'll be more comfy to sleep in the back of Kindness 2 than Kindness 1. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And also, I will be doing a speaking tour across America to businesses, schools, and just sharing the power of kindness.
I love that. That is amazing. So for those who would like to catch you on that tour, what's the best way to connect and to sort of follow your progress and journey? Obviously, the show.
Yeah, the best way is to Facebook or Twitter me or send me an Instagram message, and I'm open to coming to pretty much anywhere within the U.S.
Wonderful. Well, that should be exciting to see unfold. When does that kick off?
It starts in August.
Excellent. Not too far away. Well, Leon, this has been absolutely fascinating to connect with you. You're such an inspiration, my friend. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective. And I feel like anytime I hear a story like this, it just gives you, it adds a little bit more of yes, I can mentality to, well, for me, for the listeners, for those who want to do more, want to have more adventure in their life. And so I really honor you for doing what it is that you're doing. You're making a real difference. I do have one last question I'd like to leave you with. I always open with the same question, end with the same question. And so the question I'd like to leave you with, in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Leon?
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. The small questions.
The meaning of life is that when you leave this world, that you can look back and think that you've made a difference, that you've touched someone's life in a positive way, that you've gone out and lived fully. Then you can look back at 95 or 93 or however old you may be and think, I lived. And other people's lives are better because of it. And my life was full because I lived.
Yeah, that is so powerful, so true. And Leon, thank you, my friend. This has been such an honor. I look forward to watching you continue to spread the kindness. And, if there's any way I can ever assist, I'd certainly love to cross paths with you on your journey.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Until next time, journey well, my friend. Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes. Since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting, your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world. Because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.